Okay, the program is still on your television, African Discourse with Evans Nuhugi. Africa's developmental issues is what we're going to be extracting and talking about today. Then also we're going to be extracting factors of solutions along these problems as we discuss. And our guest this afternoon, who is joining us virtually, is a young political analyst and a public affairs analyst too, Don Etinsa Igebo. Mr. Don, one more time, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Okay. All right. So for our viewers out there, we made a video. So the PD is going to oblige us as the discussion goes on. Yes, the PD will oblige us as the discussion goes on so that you understand when we talk about Africa's developmental issues, you get to see the visuals. And of course, you come along and you understand. Now, some of the information we are following is that Africa faces a multitude of developmental challenges, including poverty, inequality, inadequate infrastructure, and unlimited access to education and health care. And we're told that these issues are compounded by factors like climate change, political instability, and the legacy of colonialism. Addressing these challenges requires a multifaceted approach involving a strong leadership, good governance, strategic investment, and international cooperation. Now, these specific challenges in Africa that we're going to be discussing about today are segmented into various factors. For example, we have the one that has to do with poverty and inequality, then also infrastructure deficiency, healthcare access, then education deficiency, then the ones that have to do with climate change impact, then political instability, which seems to be in the front burner when we talk about developmental issues in Africa. Legacy of colonialism is also a major factor there, and economic stagnation, then debt burden. And, you know, the issue of debt burden is also a major setback to the continent of Africa. Then very recently, you may want to say the one that has to do with brain drain. I mean, in Nigeria, for example, we have seen how health professionals, doctors and nurses, are leaving the nation, leaving Nigeria. And that seems to be a replica of what is happening in other African nations. You know, these are issues, these are problems, and of course, they are responsible for the setback that Africa as a continent is experiencing today. Now, Don Etinsa Igebo, we have a myriad of factors that are said to be responsible for developmental issues in Africa. Now, in all this, where do we really start talking from? How did we get here? Let's start from there.
Wow, it's a really big one. I mean, several factors, just like you said, and any one of them is not any more important than the other. Where do we really start from? I think we need to start from us as people, because you speak about colonialism. I think that would probably be at the bottom of the ladder, because the colonial masters came and they left, and government was handed over through the process of independence. So over these years, you expect people who live in those countries, who understand the difference between the good and the bad, to be able to put things together in the areas of economic development, in the areas of infrastructure, in the areas of healthcare, likewise social violence and what have you. But for some reasons, these things has not worked out. So if you really ask me, I will tell you that with the problems we've suffered over the couple of decades that we've been independent as a nation, like where we are now, maybe as a continent, I think there needs to be a very deep reflection on attitude change and the way of life, because I think that is what is affecting us as a people. Whether people are playing any roles in any sort of tiers of government, there is this attitude of wanting to get rich quick, undermining the primary objectives of what governance is about. Even when we see other climes where democracy was borrowed are doing very well, we still cannot put things together. So I think where we should start from is us as people. Our attitude needs to change, our values needs to change, our desires needs to change, and things that we worship, especially money, needs to be at the back burner in order for us to have a balance in terms of, you know, between the upper class and middle and the lower class. That is what I think. I think it should start from us as people.
Okay. All right. So a while ago, we were looking at some of the factors responsible for these developmental challenges in Africa. Then we saw the one that has to do with the legacy of our colonial masters. Now, you will agree with us, or you will agree with me on this program, that very recently we are experiencing colonial, incursion one more time into the African space. Take, for example, we've seen how the French government is interested in Africa. And of course, we've seen how the United States government is also interested in Africa. And we've also seen how the Russian government is interested in Africa. Now, this interest come with influence into our system, the system of our government, and of course, the system of our economic structures. Now, it is very difficult to understand because even as we as Africans, we recognize that one of the major problems that we face is because of continuous interference of the colonial structure in our system, and we still keep on accepting them. So the question that we ask today is are we really ready to really free ourselves from these challenges in Africa?
Well, I think I put lesser blames on the colonial masters because they've left this country for a very long time. As much as they have interest in the African states, for example, they want to deal with rare earth minerals and all the natural blessings that have been given to Africa by God. That doesn't necessarily stop Africans from taking the bull by the horn. I think the buck still stops on the table of Africans, and very little blame goes to the Western world because it is in the same climb that you see Malaysia, India, China, that were third world countries like Brazil, for instance. They became kind of really close to Millennium Development Goals. I won't hit the, you know, Sustainable Development Goals. I will hit Millennium Development Goals. So Africans cannot be left out of the fact that, they're having challenges from the colonial interference, which is understandable. But they're doing business with Africa as well. They want a piece of the pie. You give them what they want, they give you what you need, and what you need is enough to build the country. So when those funds, when those benefits are not utilized properly, I think it would be unfair to constantly blame the Western world, even if we know that they have their own little aspect that is not very pleasant. But then again, they said, "You that wears your shoes, no way it hurts you." So I think the African states and the black race should stand up and do the needful. Because the stronger they are together, the lesser the influence from the West will have an impact on them. So I think we'll put a lesser blame, like a 10%, on the West or the colonial interference, and put the 90% blame on the Africans themselves, who in turn undermine their people, create poverty to a very large extent, but due to bad economic policies, and then capital flight the money to the same Western country that will probably want to say are responsible for our problems. So in my opinion, I don't blame the West at all. I think the West has opened doors, floodgate for technology to come in, whether in the militarily or the social way of life, whether it is infrastructure. They are willing to come in and play their role and benefit, maybe benefit more. But then again, I think the buck stops on the tables of the Africans, and they should take responsibilities for the actions of the things they've done to their own people.
All right, you just talked about the Sustainable Development Goals. That is just only about 5 years from now. I mean, I've heard, and most of us have heard of that since we were kids. I mean, at the time it was the year 1990, and of course from then it was the year 2000. This is 2025, and we have just about 5 years to go because it is set at the year 2030 now. So in another 5 years, it is expected that nations of the world that has not attained the goals of the Sustainable Development Goals may be lacking behind. So let's take countries in Africa. Do you see African nations, attaining these goals in another 5 years?
I think Botswana is really close to that sort of space, and the President Kagame has done extremely well because people and the approach to the way of life has really helped them to grow as a nation. I wouldn't necessarily speak on many other African countries, but I do believe that there are countries within the African states that never really had the longevity of the interference from the Western state, whether through colonialism, that has really transformed and turned the tides around. If you look at, I know we're in Nigeria, we're really a lot of people, but when you're a lot of people, it should be a form of strength if you can piece things together. But at the same time, it also makes it a lot harder as when people are many to easily agree. But if you go back to our history, in those days, it seems like our life was better and things were done more in a more dignified way with some level of integrity, very high level of integrity compared to the way it is now. I don't understand. The more we become religious, the lower we go on the ladder, and it's affecting every Africans and Black race across the globe because they're not living up to expectation, especially in the areas of governance and administration. Everything about Africa, especially maybe like in the Western Sahara Africa most times, it seems to be negative. So I think that needs to change. In terms of the sustainable development goals, I don't think we're really near there as a nation, for example, in most of the Western African countries, because corruption has eaten too deep, and this corruption are fueled by interference from the outside the African state, and the Africans were supposed to stand up against them. In the general note, I think 85% we're not really there, except for very few many countries in Africa that has really done well, and they're actually enjoying the benefits. Like for instance, you have in the Botswana currency, a dollar is about 17 Botswana currency, equivalent of 17 maybe naira or maybe 17 kwacha or 17 cedis to the dollar. Unlike in Nigeria, for instance, you have it at about 1,500, and in other climes like maybe Somalia, it's even more so, or Zimbabwe. So to me, I think the Millennium Development Goals is very far away as it stands today.
Okay. All right. So the program you're still watching is African Discourse on independent television. And we are exploring Africa's developmental issues this afternoon and also exploring some of the factors of solution as we get along. Our guest of this afternoon is Don Etunsa Igebo. Now, if we have the visuals now, we can start rolling them so that, okay, we're just trying to provide visuals so that you get to see what we talk about, when we say these development issues in Africa. Now, Don Etunsa, you tell us, I mean, it's high time we start getting to the specifics now. We may be generalizing Africa as a continent, but let's look at Nigeria. Now, where would you want to place Nigeria as a country in Africa in, the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals? I mean, we have just about 5 years to go to that, mark at the 2030, mark.
Well, I know it's a difficult one, but at the same time, you don't want to talk a country down, especially when there are elements within that country that want things to also work. So I know it's not very easy when certain things are in too deep to overlook it because there are several many factors that will play its role to stop a process that would have worked for the betterment of everybody a lot easier. What I think I give them around maybe 60%, and maybe if they put in more effort in the next 5 years, thereabout, if the government and the chairs of government and the arms of government really, really wants to have an attitude change, in 5 years you can achieve a lot. If the states and the local government and the National Assembly members and the presidency are really willing to put in the best, I believe that we can go far in terms of in that sustainable development goal within its own rights as an African state, because when it comes to development, different nations have different cadre. We may not necessarily be in the cadre of the more advanced country, but on the level that we are, if they put in more effort into road infrastructure, into networking systems, into transportation systems, into administration in terms of providing services in a much better way, I think there could be some level of hope in that direction. I wouldn't necessarily want to talk down on the country and the challenges that people in government may have faced or the people themselves. There may be an aspect of things that we don't.
All right, so these are the visuals now. All right, so Don Etunsa, if you're still there, you can still talk along. Okay, I think we're beginning to have issues with the guest audio right there. All right, so the program is still African Discourse on independent television. We are extreme. All right, so Don Etunsa, if you're there, we may still have you now.
Yeah, so I said with the African states, I don't think Africans need very much in terms of what they desire, because remember, we still have to, Africans need to sustain their cultural heritage as well. Everywhere cannot come across and look like other climates, depending on the topography and the nature of that very environment. I do
Okay.
believe that if attitude change comes in, and if we wish to be sincere with ourselves, if we pay less attention on things that are not giving us results, that we've put on the front burner, especially the love for money and religious bigotry, if we can regularize those aspects and then copy the better things from the West that made the Western countries a lot of much attractive nations where you talk about doctors and nurses going to those countries because they believe that the system is well established and the improvement is very solid. It's 200% improvement in terms of sustainable development goals in the Western country. If we must achieve that aim, first and foremost, we must look inwards. We can't continue to throw blame the Western and colonialism because during colonial masters in Africa, the country worked better than it is this time. So I think we really need to go back to the drawing board and look inwards and then ask ourselves, are we really willing to get our country to be in the right path of prosperity? If China can do it, we can do it. If
Okay.
India can do it, we can do it. And if
Beautiful.
if
Now,
if, if we
okay,
can also do it.
just before we take a short break, Donatus, and I want you to quickly react to what analysts said, that one of the major problems with African leaders is that instead of African leaders to be buried in the attainment of sustainable development goals, which is 5 years away from now, but you rather see African leaders buried in the next election. Take, for example, what is happening in Nigeria. You know, most of our leaders are concerned about 2027 presidential election, whereas by 2027, we have just about 3 more years to 2030, the set date mark for sustainable development goals. So I want you to quickly comment on that, quickly.
Well, I think they politicize a lot of things. I wouldn't necessarily think that the idea of what is happening with politicking relative to development has a lot to do with the government currently in power. I think that resonates more with the opposition in the party in the country who feels or believes that if they topple the current government in 2027, they'll do better. So they started early. The opposition party started early in terms of needing enough time to get themselves together and maybe challenge the government in power. So I think it might be a little bit unfair to just throw that on the table of the current administration and government and say that maybe an intention is how to win in 2027. Notwithstanding that there are elements and traces of such move to a very large extent, but you expect that in the society that we live, where by the time you're out of government, whoever doesn't like you can become a thorn in your flesh, and that will obviously create some level of consciousness as to why they are aware of what the opposition is doing. However, I think governance is a continuum, and I believe that this current government is doing what they have to do, whether in a much platform that people will wish to see it and or not. But at the end of the day, like they say, it's easy to repair than to destroy, than to rebuild. It's easy to destroy than to rebuild. Maybe that is the sort of traits that I think is playing out, and I don't necessarily, leave the box on the table of the current government.
All right, so the program is still African Discourse on Independent Television, and we are looking at Africa's developmental challenges and, of course, exploring the pathways to solutions this afternoon. We quickly go for a short break now, and when we come back, we're going to be looking at pathways to the solutions, and we extract them one after the other. And also, by then, our visuals should be ready so that you can see the visuals and understand the program better this afternoon. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned. All right, thank you one more time. The program is still on your television set, African Discourse with Evans Dokugi. Yes, we have enumerated some of the factors responsible for the developmental challenges in Africa. We have said that poverty and inequality is one major issue. And we also mentioned that infrastructure deficiency is also another. Healthcare, access to quality healthcare is a major problem. The education deficiency, climate change impact, then political instability, which seems to be a major issue in Africa. Legacy of colonialism is also there, economic stagnation, then burden of debt. You hear most times when African leaders go to the United Nations summits, you always hear how African leaders, call for debt cancellation. Then the issue of brain drain is also there. That's another major issue that seems to have thrown Africa as a continent, to the very backward position that it seems to be having now. But all hope is not lost, because we know that there are array of solutions that if only African leaders can estray and take advantage of these factors, these opportunities, then of course we can begin to have our continent back. Now we still have our guest right there. Donatiosa Igebo is our guest this afternoon. Now, Donatiosa, let us begin to estray some of the pathways now to solutions. First and foremost, we may have investing in human capital. Then, of course, we also understand that strengthening governance is also another possible factor that will bring some good solutions to Africa. Then diversifying economies is also there. Then harnessing technology is also another factor. Promoting regional integration, that's the need for Africa as a country, the need for African nations to really integrate. I mean, so that our economies can integrate, and of course our politics can also integrate. Because what we seem to have is that even if we have some one or two economic bloc in Africa, the economic relationship seems not to be integrating enough. I mean, that's the reason why we still have some level of stagnation as far as development is concerned in Africa. So the issue of economic integration is also there. Promoting regional integration is also a big factor. Then addressing climate change is also a big issue. Then attracting foreign investment while empowering women is another, and also strengthening regional cooperation. Now, in all of this now, Don Etinsa Igebo, which of these factors would you want to suggest that seems to maybe encapsulates all of them all? That if maybe we just take on that factor, then of course we may be on our way to finding solutions to this myriad of challenges in Africa. Which of them, Don Etinsa?
Well, if you ask me, I think every one of them is very important. There's no one you can really put away, because intercontinental business relation is important, and investment in human capacity is very important. Investing, building infrastructure, every aspect that you mentioned so far are the bedrock of this, a developing nation that will hit Millennium Development Goals and as well as Sustainable Development Goals. I think you can swap one for the other. There's no way you would do one and not engage and apply the others and expect to get a seamless result. So every aspect across board is very important. And I also think most importantly, attitude change. The way people look at things in this modern 21st century is a lot different from the way people used to look at things in the past. These days, they put more emphasis into celebrating people and talking about the issues of money. And money is not a factor, not utilized properly, that will help us grow. When the aspect of money is when people get praised for, having so much resources within them, but then again, they are living within a bad environment and there's no real development and it doesn't bother them. So I think the nation needs to really get up and say, you know what? We want to turn things around, and every different aspect that you've mentioned are important. Once these aspects are taken care of and applied, wisdom and knowledge, I'm very certain that within a decade, Africa should really be on the path of prosperity, adequate prosperity.
All right, so Nigeria is said to be the giant of Africa. As a matter of fact, if you come to Africa and you may not have heard of Nigeria, it's possible that you are not in Africa. Now, Nigeria seems not to be giving a good example in terms of our political realization as a nation, because in all this now, our major problem in the continent is the issue that has to do with leadership. I mean, it is only in Africa that we hear a leader that has been on seats for the past 42 years, like the Paul Biya of Cameroon, who is gunning for another tenure, even if it's about 92 years. So by the time he finishes with that tenure, it's going to be 102 years. It is only in Africa. Now, Nigeria seems not to be giving a good example. In all of all this. So I don't know what is really going on. I wanted to speak, on that issue.
Well, I think the Nigeria case is a bit complex when people that are very many, over 200 million people with different ethnic groups and dialects. We should understand that on its own is a natural challenge. But however, I think we will also give Nigeria credit to a large extent because they've been able to put themselves together. When there are coup in other countries and instability in other countries, in Nigeria, the democracy seems to hold quite well. However, I believe strongly that a lot of the things that may have happened had influence from the outside, especially, for example, if you take Murtala Mohammed as a head of state, he was doing exceptionally well. What happened? Eventually was assassinated by who? By Nigerians themselves. And that idea didn't probably come from Nigeria. They were just a case of influence and interest from the outside, probably because certain elements within the space living around this world could not get their desire of what they want to take from Nigeria. So I think Nigeria is a survival nation to a very large extent because of the blessings and the natural resources that God has blessed them with. If you look at many countries across the African states, people or group of people or nation could not put themselves together by digging deep and doing what is right, end up in trouble. The more resources you have, the more there seems to be problems. And all these things is not far-fetched from the everybody wants to have a competitive advantage and take something for free. If you look at a particular area like in the Sambisa forest, they call it a forest that is not even that big for some reason. A lot of things is happening in that region, and then nobody shouted. For example, in the case of Cameroon president, definitely he had support from the Western Bloc. Cameroon is a francophone country, which means it was colonized by the French. So if the president there has been in power for 30 years, and they are the mothers of democracy, and they are not saying anything, you should already know where that interest is coming from. If the leader in Africa did not do what he was supposed to do, why are the bigger brothers in the West not saying that what he's doing is wrong, that he should step aside? But instead, they tell us democracy, probably because their interest is taken care of. So you should also look at this from that angle, because any major leaders that goes against the position of the interest, just like maybe, for example, in Burkina Faso, you can see that attempts has been made in his life. You don't talk about Gaddafi today because he's gone. So I really think that is a big challenge, and I think it's a big problem. And I think Africa should wake up. And there's no smoke without fire. If somebody is running for 30 years and is still wanting to run, it means that the country is in trouble because no new ideas will come on board. And that is a problem that I cannot just sit here and tell you this is what I think the solution would be, because otherwise I would have been speaking from an uninformed point of view, because I've not really met with the president of Cameroon to find out or ask him why he constantly runs for office, even when he's not fit to be in office. So these are some of the challenges that is existing in Africa, why Africa really needs to wake up.
All right, you mentioned Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, ironically, seems to be gaining the admiration of the world. I mean, even if we have a military junta leadership there, as led by Ibrahim Traore, the young military soldier, that has taken leadership there. Now, unlike in other parts of Africa, where we may have a situation whereby there is a democratically elected president, governments are taken over through elections and all that. Even at that, we still don't have developments. But in Burkina Faso right now, I mean, Burkina Faso military, head of state, so to say, military junta leadership, and the Burkinabes, that's the citizens of Burkina Faso, are praising the leadership there. Is it possible for us to begin to suggest in Africa that perhaps we may have to make consideration, for what seems to be, happening in Burkina Faso, because that seems to be the point of view of some analysts, Don?
Well, I don't think that is a way to go at all, because you'll get to a point, the Burkinabes themselves, was maybe in another 10 years from now, will start to make Traore understand that, yes, we appreciate you for you to come in, you're doing your best for the country. can feel the impact, but democracy is still the best form of government, whereby, even if he has to run for office, he does his tenure. He also give an opportunity for some other people to come in. Because remember, with the Burkina Faso situation, he didn't really have a choice. And the young man has come on board. He's doing what he has to do, but for very how long is he going to continue as a military leader of that nation? He has to then bring back democracy, whereby every aspect of the society will hold on to whatever he has achieved and build on that. Like in modern African countries, it doesn't even make any economic or political sense or social sense to say maybe you want a situation whereby countries are overthrown by the military, because this overthrow is violent in most cases. You don't need that. Whether good or bad, whether the level of achievement is measurable and comparable to the other clients where things are a lot better, that shouldn't really encourage or give room for that sort of forceful government change. Because remember, there are parts in Africa, many parts in Africa where democracy has thrived. Democracy is thriving in Nigeria, just that people expect more to be done, especially in the areas of food security, insecurity, and things like that. A lot of the things that Nigeria suffers today was not really created by Nigerians. It was done because of the kind of strategic nation that it is, and we are a heavily populated nation. You cannot have what happened in Burkina Faso happen in Nigeria. Believe me, there will be a lot of destabilization of the Western Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. And that is one thing that even the West themselves know they never encourage. We've gone through that phase of military coup. I don't think it will ever happen in Nigeria again. If anybody's interested to be president, get involved in a political platform and contest. And if you win, you lead the country for as long as the constitution allows you. But I mean, in terms of Burkina Faso, as much as I respect and I praise the effort of Traore, I think he will get to a point whereby he has to now turn around and conduct a proper election. And if he's interested to run to be president, he can do that. Because in Senegal, we have a young president who came in through proper elections after a coup. So on that note, I think that it would be wrong for any women in Nigeria and Africa, or anybody in the world, to assume that what happened in Burkina Faso is the best bet towards development. If not, why is Botswana very developed when they have a democracy? So democracy is still the best form of government where everybody can contribute their quota, rather than having a kind of top-down reorganization where one man sits in a position and makes decisions. If in 5 years, in 10 years, and Traore turns to become a different kind of person, maybe then we'll appreciate democracy more. So I still think democracy is the best bet, and the issue of overthrow should be thrown out the window. I'm not really for that.
Okay. Now, Africa seems to have been a very cultural, setup. I mean, there seems to be this cultural belief that women really don't have a lot to offer when it comes to leadership in Africa. And to some analysts, that seems to have been a major setback on the continent. But we are seeing, current and recent calls for the need of women to come into leadership space in Africa. Now, do you think women can really help in this developmental journey in the continent?
Well, women are leading every homes in Africa and the world. Any home without a stable woman, the home hardly ever survives, especially when they are responsible ones. Yes, we know that there may be some irresponsible ones, but then again, women are humans just like us. There are very, very many intelligent women who can have room. When given the opportunity, they can actually lead. I mean, Angela Merkel of Germany was the vice chancellor for many years. She led well. Margaret Thatcher was once one of those people, and the IMF head today is a woman. I mean, I think the environment needs to be serene enough for more responsible women to be involved in governance. And because by the time women are involved, from my little observations, they seems to be challenged. Africa has its own traditional doctrine that has spanned into other aspects of, areas of life, especially in the space where a more male-dominated aspects, like in politics, for instance, where you have male presidents and governors, and at the end of the day, it has practically become the way things are done. That doesn't mean that women cannot play their role when the appropriate one comes on board. But remember, men and women was designed differently. There are many women who has proven beyond reasonable doubt that women can actually do a lot to help in the development of of the African state. And I think we should encourage more positive women, educated women to play their role and contribute their quota, because women can be very smart in certain ways, unlike men who looks at things more generic in some cases. So yes, I support the idea of more women taking up leadership role. I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah, if you support the idea of women coming into the leadership space in Africa, that's a good one. But what seems to be happening in Nigeria today is that as we speak now, there is a review of the Constitution. The 1999 Constitution as amended. And the issue of women inclusivity also is there. But that seems not to be gaining grounds because I really don't understand. Now, uh, it is still the African thing, and it is also the same thing that is also happening in other nations of Africa. I mean, the issue of women coming into leadership space has to assume a legislative, position so that women can actually have their space in leadership. But women are not getting, that support as it were. So don't you think it's almost a situation of men saying it with one part of their mouth and not really meaning it in their hearts? Don't you think so?
Women, the absence of women in any home will make that home suffer.
Mm.
So for a woman to participate in politics, believe me, they must have kids that are already grown and they are self-reliant. They can be independent of having to do with their mom. Remember, a lot of kids, even grown-up kids, still fall back to their mothers for many things that they do. And mothers on their own are naturally very protective. They believe that the kids never grow well enough to want to be involved in certain things in terms of public service. So I think it's creation. It's being a woman, and it has to get to a certain stage in life, maybe when their kids are grown, that they can really enjoy the liberty of being able to play the game called politics. Like with a man, he leaves the home, the women are there with the kids playing the most important role in
Mm.
most cases. And then you're going to expect such a woman to probably leave and then, go ahead and how do I put it? Go ahead and play hold political office when he has his family to look after. So I think that is the factor that is affecting the women thing in Africa in particular, rather than not wanting women to play the role. I've seen many very intelligent women. I've supported intelligent women, even in Edo, for instance, to hold very strategic and important positions, especially when they can give deliverables, because women don't have that motherly love and role in them to naturally want people to be okay, rather than a man who can sticky there, sticky here, and then is elsewhere tomorrow. So, yeah, I think women should participate more, and I don't think you can really lay that blames on the tables of the men, because it is a natural phenomenon that women are the bedrock and the pillars of every home. So that kind of restricts them from being able to actively play certain role in the space until certain times, which when it gets to that time, many kids will even discourage them not to be involved because of the nature of how the game is played, for example, in Africa or Nigeria.
Okay. So in all this now, political instability seems to be the major factor. So as we round up this topic today now, I just need a 30 seconds reaction from you. How can we, and how do we strengthen our political, stability in Africa? Quickly.
I think one of the things is that I see a lot of pretenders in the political system. A lot of people pretend, even these people who call themselves leaders, they don't tell the truth. They have chameleon-like nature and characters, but they portray themselves to be in a certain way. You can see them standing in public gatherings and address people like they're the one leading people to the promised land. I don't think if Jesus Christ was that deceptive with what he was saying, even if at the time when he was here, people didn't really believe him that he was the Son of God, his impact would have been felt as much as it felt today. I think people need to leave the politics of deception and obviously harness and scout for more intelligent, progressive people who would join hands with those who are also negative and not telling the truth and telling
Mm.
lies and doing the other thing. Only what they care about is their pocket in order to have things turn around for the betterment of everybody. Because some of them are very heartless, and
Okay.
when they have opportunity, they keep lying and they just get what they want for them and their families, that they don't care about anybody else.
All
I
right.
think that is
So,
the area we need to do.
okay. All right, so we want to say a very big thank you, Don Etunsa Egiebo, for finding time to join
You can
us
correct that.
today.
We'll all be fine, including those people that have been doing the wrong things.
Yeah. All right. So thank you so much. Thank
Yeah,
you so much,
thank you very
Don.
much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. All right. So that's the program today, African Discourse on Independent Television, and we have talked about myriads of African developmental issues, and of course how we can really find possible solutions to all this. We just hope and pray that one day, 5 years from now, is going to be 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals period. So Africa, it still seems that Africa is still lacking in all of this. But we hope and pray that in another 5 years from now, we should be able to brace up with the rest of the world in this regard. All right, so we'll end the program here today on television, independent television. And my name is Evan Zunohuge. Until the same time and next week when we come with another exciting topic on the same show. Goodbye and God bless you.